Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mike's. Proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day, and our co-sponsor, CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online. I am Evan Irwin. We get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Ruben Bressler.
Hello.
Aaron Campbell.
Twice? What?
Yeah, 2 weeks in a row. Right.
Actually, it's just written in the script. It's nothing
Yeah, so
personal.
there. Take that.
Take that, script writer.
That's right.
So,
Take it up with the writer's room, Aaron.
A true star will always get the spotlight back on her.
That's
No,
fair.
Aaron-
You're just getting the post, like when they announce all the regular actors, and then afterwards they say with Anthony Hopkins, and it's always like they get the special
with special guest.
Right. And featuring Morgan Freeman, like after the rest of the 9 actors that are in the movie.
Morgan Freeman.
That's
I'll
like
take
that.
it. I'll take
Yeah.
it.
So, Aaron, you're in a different location this time. You'll sound a little bit different.
Yeah, I'm actually at the boyfriend's apartment. I am currently in Mundelein, Illinois. If you don't know where that is, I don't blame you. But yeah, I was just visiting the boyfriend after the holidays, and he's got a pretty decent lighting setup and a great computer, good Wi-Fi, so we will be leaving the taters at the dinner table.
Unless Ruben decides to bring some.
Speak for yourself. We'll see.
Tater challenge.
Taters running the family in the Bressler family bloodline. I'm still at the parents' house in Ohio. I'm feeling much better. Thank you.
Good.
Internet asking.
Yay.
Yeah, my health is an issue. It just is a thing. Luckily, I was home and had family taking care of me this particular time. But yes, I am in Ohio, Columbus, Ohio. Which, if you don't know where Columbus, Ohio is, I will blame you. That one's like kind of one of the ones you should know at this point, right? Like
Yeah.
We're all adults. You should know where Ohio is. So yeah, we'll see if we tater. But
I'm thankful that you're healthy, Ruben.
well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm thankful that we're all happy, healthy, and still doing this program together after more than 2 years of trying to put up with each other's inane opinions.
Just too much. It's never going to last.
Just like Thanksgiving
It's a lot.
every week.
Yeah, and you put up with my potatoes, so
Well,
that's true love. Is what
somebody's
that
got to chop them and slop them and then cover and whatever.
is. Right.
You know,
And-
Yeah, exactly.
something about Waffle House. Okay.
Yeah, if you haven't been drunk at 3 a.m. at a Waffle House, are you really American? I don't know. It's like you gotta.
I've been blowing people's minds with the Waffle House Disaster Index, which is a actual thing. They judge the size and the scope of
yeah.
disasters by which Waffle Houses are open and which Waffle Houses are closed.
Yeah. I've
Yeah.
seen that.
And if the
Heard
waffle,
that.
it helps you sort of create a perimeter of how bad is it the Waffle
Right.
Houses aren't open.
That's awesome.
All right. So that said, we begin each week with our choice of the top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most prolific in letting us know what card we didn't choose as one of our top 10 Simic cards. Ruben?
Yeah, in the grand theme of all things Simic, I will play God this week by deciding who gets the power. And this week's power comes from Daniel C., who writes, an innocuous Simic creature from Eventide stole my heart early in the Age of Planeswalkers by giving me a doubling season that could attack and block, as well as doubling things. Gilderbairn is a combo Johnny's dream come true, which has seen wacky play in every format it's ever been allowed in. Besides, it's a crazy guy in a frog suit, leaving a trail of glowing bugs wherever he goes. What's not to love?
Is it a frog suit? I always thought it was like a bear suit.
I thought it was sort of froggy.
It looks a little bit like the frog suit from Super Mario 3, I think.
Or Tanuki? Like, it's adorable.
Sure. It looks like, what are those onesies? The Japanese, like, anime onesies.
I didn't know there were anime onesies versus just onesies, personally, but
You wanna
Well,
talk,
you know what I'm talking about.
sure. Well, Gilderbairn was very close on my list. For those who don't know, it's 2 Simic mana and a generic mana for a 1/3 uncommon oof. It's an oof.
It is oof.
Oof, y'all. It is a Simic and 2 generic mana and untap. Remember the untap, symbol? That didn't last long. So a Simic mana, 2 generic mana, untap. For each counter on target permanent, put another one of those counters on that permanent.
Yeah. I always thought it was just somebody who was going trick-or-treating. But it's classic Nils Hamm, like, creepy fairy tale art. It's just my favorite.
Well,
it's so good.
The flavor text really plays into that, because the artist is like this sort of weird little boy. Well, it's an oof that has this frog suit on and like collecting things and says,
is a frog suit or something.
And it's collecting glowing things with the flavor text of, do the glowing trinkets show it the way home, or do they set a twisted path for someone else to follow?
Makes you think.
Someone's going to eat him. That's what it's saying.
That's really what's going to happen.
It's going to get eaten, and it's all your fault. Okay.
That got dark.
It got super. Hey man, it was Eventide, Shadowmoor.
I think is the word I'm looking for. Kigurumi. Yeah, Kigurumi is what I'm looking for. Are those onesies that like casual, like when the cosplayers don't want to put on their entire cosplay outfit and they wear the Kigurumis? I need to get one of those.
I didn't know that was the name for that.
They're like onesie pajamas, like footy pajamas, but they have a hood.
Well, Daniel C., congratulations. You have won a $50 gift certificate at CoolStuffInc.com for your awesome comment. Thank you very much for interacting. Give us a shout on all of our social channels in any fashion you desire, and we will get you your gift certificate as soon as possible. So, with that said, it's time to move on here to number 10 in our top 10 Ixalan cards. Ixalan's been out a little while, and that's okay, giving us time to kind of get used to it, get ready. And we don't have that much overlap, surprisingly.
No.
Yeah, it's been out for a little while. We all found things that we all separately like differently from one another, which I kind of like.
And that hopefully that's how the show works.
Yeah.
The viewers are like, finally.
We'll see.
I know, right?
Right?
God. Well, I'll go ahead and kick it off with number 10 with, and this is very similar to sort of my top 10 lands. I think there is a booby prize involved sometimes. When a card is so bad, you have to go, man, this is noteworthy terrible. Old Growth Dryads is noteworthily awful. It is a 1 green mana 3/3. It is a rare Dryad. And it says, when it enters the battlefield, each opponent may search their library for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and search, and then shuffle their library. It's terrible. Like, it's really, seriously, like, there's no format in which you want this card, unless you're doing, like, a group hug EDH thing, I guess. Because, like, seriously, in no 2-player format do you want your opponent to get ahead of you in mana. A 1 mana 3/3, you're giving them the mana to catch up to your 3/3.
Right.
It's bad and constructed. It's bad and limited. It's bad. Oh my god, it's bad. It's like it's just one of those like shockingly, oh my god, it's terrible bad cards. That was.
Yeah. I seem to recall there being discussions around it when it was first previewed about like, could it maybe fit in like the zoo decks? Could it fit in the in the older formats? And when I look at this card, the only thing I think of is that we will never have Curdape again. Like we will, you look at a card like that and you look at what we're used to. We're used to Wild Nacatls and Curdapes, and this is Wizard saying no. This is what you get. In order to give you a 1 mana 3/3, there needs to be a significant drawback, and there is one with this card, and it's a bummer.
Like LSV has it as a scale, like from 0 to 5, right? And this was literally 0.0 in both formats, just unplayable.
Yeah, it's unfortunate too, because like the most popular decks in old formats, in Legacy and Vintage and Modern, don't really have many basic lands, but it's just like you're running your one island in Affinity just in case you get Path to Exiled. You just can't run Old Growth Dryads in any way, shape, or form. It's really unfortunate. Because like I like the design, but like there's just no way for me to show my appreciation for the design when it's just so overwhelmingly bad in every spot imaginable.
Maybe if it was a 4/4, or maybe...
Or a 3/4, like if that 4 toughness, that's one thing, because then it gets around Bolt. But yeah, it doesn't match up the way it is.
It was hilariously bad to me, and that's why I chose it for my number 10. Ruben, what is your number 10?
My number 10 took the Magic the Gathering Twitter sphere by storm when it initially came out. An entirely new archetype sprung up around it. Rumors persisted about a new deck featuring it in Legacy for weeks, right up until the point that it turns out it was all just a clever ruse. Siren's Ruse is my number 10, and the deck I'm talking about is Popeye Stompy. You may recall the Popeye Stompy craze that went on early October when Bob Wong and a bunch of the Legacy superstars over at Channel Fireball decided to spring upon their unsuspecting victims/readers a blue control deck that used both, taxing things and Chalice of the Void with super mana efficient lands like Ancient Tomb, and then Force of Will backup. And every once in a while, you'll get a Force of Will Chalice of the Void deck that springs up. And this time around, they decided to make it Pirate Stompy instead of Dragon Stompy or Fairy Stompy or whatever, what have you, over the years. And it all surrounded Siren's Ruse, which is a colorless and a blue, common instant from Ixalan. Exile target creature you control, then return that creature to the battlefield under its owner's control. If it's a pirate, draw a card.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple. Allows you to cycle and blink at the same time with a bunch of the pirates that are in the deck. One of my favorite limited cards, honestly, it's a fabulous card in one of my favorite limited archetypes in Ixalan, which is blue-red pirates, specifically. And I just think that it's hilarious that people were saying that they were dropping at 4-0 with Popeye Stompy. There was this crazy dragon or a pirate Stompy list that was being played online, and people were hiding it before the Legacy Championships that weekend, and people like Julian Nabe and Bob Wong were hiding it from the people, and Saffron Olive and a bunch of folks were starting these discussions of like, what does technology mean? Are you allowed to keep it secret? What does it mean to have a deck list kept secret if you're playing it on Magic Online? We had all these discussions, and then turns out it was all just a joke. The deck is just bad.
But then some people actually did build it.
Right, and then people built it and then beat people like Bob and Julian with the deck, which is even better. It's just amazing. So I for the story alone, but also because it's quite a good limited card, I will take Siren's Ruse.
I'll take any deck that runs 4 Saprazon Scary.
Yeah. Saprazon Scary, man.
Yeah.
What are those? The farmlands?
The depletion lands from Arcadia Masks.
Right, like Remote Farm and Hickory Woodlot.
Hickory.
In case you want,
that makes a pretty great drag name, Hickory Woodlot.
Hickory Woodlot, Saprazon Scary, Hickory Woodlot, Remote Farm doesn't really work.
No.
Are you trying to tell me they got that hit that we got that wood on lock? Is that what we're trying to tell me?
I would say, yeah. There you go. I got Pete Bog. That's an actual just name. That's not even a drag name.
It could be like a drag king name.
There you go. Pete Bog. I like that. And then there's Sandstone Needle, which is also a decent drag name, I feel.
That sounds like the name of the bar. Like
the Sandstone Needle?
Right.
Coming to the main stage here at the Sandstone Needle, Pete Bog and Saprazon Scary. Yeah. Remote Farms on tap. We got you on Hickory Woodlock.
Aaron, what is your number 10?
Shortly after Ixalan came out, I was invited to participate in a program with Ilian, if you're familiar with him, Ilian TV on Twitter. He was doing a series at Newmont Gaming called Elder Dragon Hoedown. And just to be clear, it was called that before I appeared on the show.
I'm glad we cleared that up.
And basically what it is it's every week he plays a game of Commander online with 3 of his friends, and they each have a theme to their decks, and it's sort of, I think Saffron Olive does something similar, these Commander clashes that he does, and this was Ilian's version. And so coming on the heels of Ixalan, we each agreed to build using the different tribes. And so I, of course, was playing Vana, I was playing a vampire deck, we had a young man who was on Tishana playing Merfolk, we had somebody else who was on Pirates, they were playing Beckett Brass, and we were with a young man named Tom Delia. And Tom showed up with a deck featuring my number 10, which is Gishop Sun's Avatar, which is repping dinosaurs. And this card is terrifying. So it is 5, a red, a green, and a white. It's a legendary creature, Dinosaur Avatar. Hello.
Yeah.
Trample, Vigilance, and Haste. 7/6, which is terrifying by itself. But then the second paragraph says, whenever Gishop deals combat damage to a player, which it's likely to do when it has Trample, Vigilance, or Haste, you reveal that many cards from the top of your library, which is 7 in their case, put any number of dinosaur creatures from among them onto the battlefield, and the rest on the bottom of your library, not to your hand, not in a zone, oh no, on the battlefield. And if you've seen any of the dinosaurs from Ixalan, the majority of them are just scary, right out the gate. And so to have all of them come out of the battlefield, it's a very terrifying prospect. And needless to say, Tom ended up winning the game. I believe he won the game. But yeah, I was not as afraid of the other commanders as I was this card.
This card is real. This is one of those like sort of Temmie payoff cards. Like, it was very close to my top 10, definitely on the short list. And when something hits this hard, has sort of all the abilities you wanted to have. I mean, I'm old man magic over here. I remember when you'd only get like the second paragraph. Right. It's like, good luck getting your 7/6 in there, however you're supposed to, let alone giving it haste, let alone giving it trample. And also it has vigilance, so I can attack and block because reasons. Like, it's the sundae, and it's the chocolate, and then it's the cherry, and it's everything. It's all right there in a package, and it's beautiful, and I love it.
Yeah, this is for the people who, if you were buying into Ixalan, or if you were interested in Ixalan for dinosaurs, like if dinosaurs were your jam, this was Wizards' love letter to you. Like, we got you. Like,
this is fun. This is cool. Here's your top end.
They sort of learned their lesson from trying to make a legendary werewolf, and we're like, no, if we're going to make a legendary dinosaur, the people don't care how much it costs. The people care what it does, and this is a legendary dinosaur.
Yeah.
That is what this thing does, and it does it well.
Yeah, it is very good and very scary, and I love it. All right, we'll move on here to number 9. Aaron, what is your number 9?
My number 9 is a card that, given enough time, could make Merfolk a deck in Standard again. I think we're kind of at a point sort of like we were with zombies for a little while in the previous block, where like, Shadow's block gave us some fine zombies, but it really wasn't until Amonkhet that we had enough to really break the deck wide open. And certainly with Ixalan, we have some good Merfolk, but I think we're missing a couple pieces. And when we do get them, hopefully in Rivals, Kapala, Warden of Waves will certainly be a reason for that. So Kapala is 1 and 2 blue. He's a 2/2 legendary creature, Merfolk Wizard. Spells your opponent casts the target of Merfolk you control now costs 2 colorless more to cast. And then abilities your opponents activate that target of Merfolk you control cost 2 colorless more to activate. So he's very reminiscent of Kira, Great Glassspinner, for those who are familiar with her in older formats. But this one's actually a Merfolk, which is really surprising to me that this hasn't taken off more, because Kira is great and all, but she doesn't actually benefit from anything any of the lords do in the Merfolk tribal decks that we're used to. And so I'm really surprised that people aren't using Kapala instead, where he gains the Island Walk, he gains all the bonuses. But I do think if it becomes a thing in Standard, he will absolutely be part of the reason why.
There is a debate amongst the Merfolk sub-community, sub being under the water, that
this guy.
What's the difference? What's the tangible difference between countering the spell like Kira or putting a tax on it like Kiora, or not Kiora, or like Kapala? Personally, I like the tax more because Abrupt Decay exists.
Yeah.
And so when you make Abrupt Decay cost 4 instead of 2, because it can't be countered, I think that's a huge boon. I ran Monastery Siege when I was playing Merfolk in Modern years ago for the same reason. I just felt like the taxing benefit was better for what I wanted to be doing. Now, Monastery Siege had other benefits having to do with like getting targeted by discard spells, but that doesn't factor in here. I think that you're right, that Kapala definitely doesn't yet have her time in the sun, or his time in the sun yet. I think that if Merfolk is going to be a Standard player, he's going to be a major part of it. Because even though there isn't a Merfolk Lord in Standard, but this is the closest we have right now, granting a benefit to all of the team members. So yeah, Kapala's a good sleeper pick as well.
With the Silvergill Adept is coming. That's a thing that has been confirmed, which is awesome. I would refer this more to as sort of a Frost Titan ability. And because Frost Titan you had to pay 2 more to target it with effects or spells, and that was one of the abilities that everyone kind of discounted. No one really talked about Frost Titan. Everyone thought it was the worst Titan, and then it showed up, and when it was when it actually hit the board, it was like, whoa, that tax is serious. Like, they don't have enough mana to do X and Y.
Yeah.
And
so you can definitely benefit, especially if there's another. What was the 2 blue mana 2/2 that tapped red or green creatures? That was in Mono Blue Devotion for a while. If there's another effect that tangibly affects your opponent's board while it's on the board, and you can put that tax next to it, that's a big deal. And certainly there's plenty of room for that coming up in the next Ixalan expansion.
Absolutely. So this card definitely has potential. And I would note that taxing doesn't read that great, but man, it plays amazing.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Just like giving your opponents lands doesn't play great and helps them pay for that tax.
Yeah.
So that's a nombo.
It's bad. It's terrible. Holy cow. It's freaking awful. Ruben, what's your number 9?
My number 9, you guys know I like it when you got top 8 pedigree. 2 different decks ran this card in the top 8. It was sort of like one of the top end du jour finisher kind of effect. It wasn't even the finisher of the deck. It was just a way to go over the top. My number 9 is Vraska Relic Seeker.
Nice.
Which wasn't the Planeswalker that got all the pub when the set came out. That would be Jace Shiny Chest. But Jace didn't make his way into any top 8 lists, and Vraska did find her way into Peter Glogowski and Mike Sigrist's top 8 lists from Pro Tour Ixalan. So for those of you who are unaware, Vraska Relic Seeker is a 4-colorless black and green legendary Planeswalker Vraska that enters the battlefield with 6, that's count 'em, 6 loyalty, and has a +2 of creating a 2/2 black pirate creature token with menace, has a -3 destroy target artifact, creature, or enchantment, create a colorless treasure artifact token with tap, sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, and -10 target player's life total becomes 1. This was a way to go over the top of a lot of the teamer energy and Sultai energy and 4-color energy matchups would devolve into these slog battles of who could top deck better, who could actually stick a Scarab God, who could actually get a threat to stay on the board for longer than a turn. And Vraska was a really good way to get over the top of that because it was able to take out Glory Bringers, it was able to take out some of the things like Sky Sovereign, some of these big top end kind of things, while also being able to protect herself. Vraska, immediately going up to 8 on an empty board and making a creature that can block is a huge deal. Being able to come down onto a board when you need to answer something specifically and maintaining up to 3 loyalty is also a huge deal, especially since the Lightning Strike wasn't as popular. People were much more into Harness Lightning and Abrade to be able to finish off creatures and have a little bit more flexibility rather than trying to kill off Vraskas. And it's just all around generally a good card. I know that this was the card that Reed Duke was most excited for in the set when it was released. Appealing to Aaron's sensibilities there a little bit, but I got no shame. So, but it wasn't even until he saw the card. It was Vraska is in the set. That means there's probably a green-black Planeswalker in the set, which he was just excited about, which I thought was adorable and also quite on brand. Vraska has proven herself to be quite the potent, not really bad guy, but sort of anti-hero of Ixalan. The only downfall being that you can't run her as a pirate captain in the Pirates EDH deck, which is a little bit of a flavor fail, but you know what? I'll let it slide because she's got all the rest. So
she's got all the stats, and clearly it's ridiculous and limited, and I know this because I played against it and I lost, and then I played the next game and they played it and I lost. She's basically almost unstoppable and limited unless you have an overwhelming board, and I mean like overwhelming. And it was great to see her just sort of show up at the Pro Tour as this like ace in the hole of we're cool, we're doing this, and you can't beat this Planeswalker. Nice deck you got there.
It's great.
Vraska's awesome. That's terrific. All right, so we're gonna move on here to my number 9, and sometimes I like cards because their flavor is just ridiculous, and sometimes the names are really good. Like I don't know if anyone has any of the names of awesome cards coming up, so I won't spoil any of them. But I'll say that no one has Walk the Plank on their list. And sometimes when you have a pirate set and you got pirates with dinosaurs and merfolk, walking the plank. that destroys target non-merfolk creature that is it's just so good and beautiful and perfect. It's one of the first things they spoiled about Ixalan, when actual spoiler season started. And this is the sort of the type of effect that I love. It's 1 sentence, 2 black, uncommon sorcery, destroy target non-merfolk creature. It's just good, solid, awesome removal. It's flavorful, it's beautiful. I love the image. It's super cool. And Walk the Plank for me, it was just one of those like, oh, we're in Ixalan. This is Ixalan.
Yeah.
This is where
that's
we're at.
The pirate set.
Yeah.
It's flavorful, but it's also it kind of suffers from the same problem as Smuggler's Copter, where when you think about it too hard, it starts to not make sense. Like I remember when Smuggler's Copter came out, and they were like, "You're going to put a Rurik Thar in a Smuggler's Copter," and like when you look at Walk the Plank, and it's like you're going to make a dinosaur walk the plank. Like when you really start putting the combinations together, all the possibilities. Like you're going to put like Ulamog on a what? Like it just starts to get absurd when you think about it too hard.
And like woo, Aaron over here, the flavor police. Like sorry,
you're going to make Krovakin Mists walk the plank. Like how you gonna try to do that? No, I get it. That goes back to like how do you remove soulless one and whatnot. But if you don't think about it too hard, it's just good, delightful. You gotta walk into it like it's a comic book movie, right? It's just this is a video game cutscene that we're watching right now. Just be happy that there's a card called Walk the Plank that destroys non-merfolks, and just be like, oh, that's a cool thing. And they didn't water it down with a bunch of excess words. Because black removal spells have always had this problem where they're just like want to put so many gosh darn words on their text box when all you really need is murder. It took them like 15 years to print the card destroy target creature.
Yeah.
So now that we don't have destroy target non-artifact, non-enchantment, not on a Tuesday, can't be regenerated, now that we have just word, like this makes sense. I get this. It's easy to grok, right? That's an Evan. Appealing to Evan's sensibilities now. It's just a solid sentence of magic, matching up with a flavor text, matching up with an art, matching up with a title. I love it.
Also, can we get murder back, because it was an Eldritch Moon. I missed it. It just kind of came and went.
Murder is one of those cards that should be in every standard. It should be like Oblivion Ring or whatever we have now, Banishing Light. It should be. That should just be an evergreen effect that we just always have access to. I don't know why we don't, but
I mean, it took them long enough to reprint it. It was originally Magic 2013, didn't show up to Eldritch Moon. Then it showed up in Conspiracy Take the Crown, which is pretty nice.
Sure,
but I just
that was like
a
central plot point in Conspiracy Take the Crown was murder. So spoilers in case you hadn't played too much of Take the Crown, but not really spoilers.
But not really.
Like a year ago.
Nah. So we're going to move on here to number 8. And my number 8 is basically giving it up to Wizards for something that's very difficult. And there's something that Wizards kind of goes through every single set, and they try their best to do it, and sometimes they get there and sometimes they don't. There's a finesse. There's a real sort of je ne sais quoi about a red rare. Red rares are really hard to design. If it's not just like a stupid burn spell and it's not a dragon, what are you supposed to do? Oh, no. Well, sometimes they make really silly, ridiculous cards, and this is definitely one of them. Sunbird's Invocation is a red and 5 generic mana for a rare enchantment. The things go insane. Whenever you cast a spell from your hand, reveal the top X cards from your library where X is that spell's converted mana cost. You may cast a card revealed this way with converted mana cost X or less without paying its mana cost. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So you have this kind of wacky, silly ability that's super cool. It's kind of cascadey, but not really, it doesn't really do anything when you play it, so it's definitely more of a casual type thing. But there's a ton of fun, I think, wrapped in this card, and it's one of the ways that they really struggle with interesting red rares, and I thought they really made a great one this time. It's interesting, neat, fun. There's a lot of cool things. You can just blow a player out, and it seems super fun in any casual format.
Yeah, I've played it in Limited before, and it's honestly pretty darn good in Limited if you have the right deck for it. I was playing like the 5-color treasure ramp garbage, and just playing that thing and then untapping, and then playing a 5-mana idiot, and then playing a 3-mana anything, literally anything. If you activate Sunbird's Invocation, it's like almost paying for itself immediately.
Right.
Because you're not just drawing the card, you're choosing cards from the top of your deck and then, sort of mind-moiling them back onto the bottom of your library and taking the cream of the crop and being able to cast literally everything that's good on the top of your deck, let alone once you get to cycle through it 2, 3, 4 times, let alone if you're playing instants. It just gets ridiculous if you're playing at instant speed. I've had a lot of fun with Sunbird's Invocation in Limited. I haven't gotten to play it in Constructed. Theoretically, there's like an Approach of the Second Sun, Sunbird's Invocation combo thing that you can do. Didn't really pop up yet. But yeah, I love Sunbird's Invocation. And obviously I have a soft spot in my heart for Red. So anytime Red is able to do anything that it's not inherently well known for, like burning things and dragoning things and adding mana sometimes, or destroying lands occasionally.
Oh, you made a goblin. That's never been done.
This creature has fire breathing now. Well, that's new, right? Creatures have haste. Delightful. But yeah, this is like a new and interesting take on Red. It goes away from the anger and more towards the passion and the inspiration, more of the Perforos flavor of Red that I really appreciate.
Yeah, I feel the same way. When I say I don't like Red, it's usually reserved for burn strategies. I don't like losing to burn decks, but some very astute viewers have noticed that I like Faithless Looting and I like Cathartic Reunion and I like things like that. I just recently built a Locust God EDH deck and I had a blast playing it the other day. And I took a picture and posted it to Twitter and they were like, "Are you playing mountains?" And I was like, "Yeah, but I'm not running burn spells." I was like, "I'm running like Shattered Perceptions, and I'm running, things like that." And so I agree with you, Ruben. I like Red when it's not doing traditionally Red things of, oh, there's a burn spell. No, who wants to do that? But if it involves like Molten Psyche, I'm completely here for that. Things that are not traditionally Red, I'm very likely to play, and they make me want to hang up my mountain.
Right, there you go.
And yet still, the mountain stays unhung.
We need a few more Sunbird's Invocations before we're able to...
I did manage to kill somebody. Be very proud of me, Ruben. So there was a young man in my pod who got down to 2, and I killed him with burn, like from turn and burn. I was like, "What are you at?" He goes 2, and I went,
burn you out. Literally burn you out.
Literally burn you out with a burn spell. Spell burn.
You truly next level is you should hang the mountain in the boyfriend's place behind you.
There you go.
So it's only awesome. Here,
So that that it's like an annex. It's like this is Aaron Campbell adjacent studios, right? The other thing I really enjoyed about Sunbird's Invocation is it really reminded me of one of my favorite episodes of Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is the Firebending Masters. If you haven't gone and seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, you should go see Avatar: The Last Airbender and watch that. But the Avatar and Zuko get really in touch with where the dragon's power come from. And it's not anger and hate and vitriol and all these things that we associate with Red and Magic the Gathering and lots of other, barbarian rage and like that kind of stuff. But there is that passion and the creativity and there are multiple different colors at play within Red. And that really is what Sunbird Invocation hammers home for me as well.
And you're talking about the television show, right?
The show, not the Blue Aliens. I'm talking about Aang of the Northern Air Temples, who is the last of his kind that got frozen. He got a cold one with the boys and was frozen in a block of ice for 100 years. And then
as you do,
a couple of kids from the Southern Water Tribe. Look, it's a long story. Just go watch it.
Nerd.
When you get frozen for 100 years, you're like, oops, sorry, frozen for 100 years.
Yeah. Well, look, here's the story. Long ago,
four
nations lived in harmony.
Ruben.
Then everything. All right, we can move on.
All right, sweet. Ruben, what is your number 8?
My number 8 came about because a man named Collins Mullen ran a rampage on the StarCityGames.com Modern Open in Cincinnati back in October. And he just ran roughshod over the tournament. I'm not sure he lost more than 3 games over the course of the tournament. He won it with 5-color humans in Modern. And a big reason why is because a new card came out that supported the mana base. We had 5-color lands in the past. Typically, when you want to get a 5-color land, it's going to be a rare. It's going to be something like Cavern of Souls, right? Or a City of Brass. If you want to have a good utility land, it's very rare that it's going to come at any other rarity. Etherhub is the exception, not the rule.
Did you just say Etherhub?
Either way. See what I... In any case...
Ether.
Ether way.
Either way.
But they printed one in Ixalan named Unclaimed Territory, which is sort of like a reined-in Cavern of Souls. That, you know what? A reined-in Cavern of Souls is plenty good enough, turns out. So it's an uncommon land that's also a promo. I think, is it an F&M promo?
I'm not sure.
Might be. I don't know. It's one of the promos. As Unclaimed Territory enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Tap, add a Wingding. That's a colorless mana to your mana pool.
Yeah.
Or tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Spend this mana only to cast creature spells of the chosen type. So, alongside Ancient Ziggurat and Cavern of Souls and the various other sundries that you can use to cast your mishmash of humans, Collins Mullen destroyed the Star City Games Open in Cincinnati and really shifted the format wildly in just one tournament. Now, the deck is really good when it can prey upon creature light formats. Like it gets a little wonky in the mirror. When you're playing against other decks that have a lot of creatures in them, it's a bit of a problem. But when you're playing against Storm, which was really popular in Cincinnati, when you're playing against things like, even something like Jund has a bit of a problem because you just have so many gosh darn humans. It can take people by surprise, and it certainly took Cincinnati by surprise, and that's a lot to do with the mana base. And so Unclaimed Territory is my pick.
Well, I'm glad they finally reprinted Cavern of Souls in Modern Masters 2017. It's still a $55, $60 card.
Yeah.
So that's
Cavern of
real.
Souls is another one of those cards that's just so Avacyn Restored is just one of those sets nobody opened. That's just going to be a thing. Like if nobody opened your set, cards like Craterhoof Behemoth, Cavern of Souls, Voice of Resurgence, those are just going to be problems.
Voice was in Dragon's Mace. But
I know. I'm saying it's a third set that nobody opened.
Gotcha.
But when you have crazy rares and mythics in third sets that nobody opened, this also happens in second sets, like Born of the Gods sometimes. Like if there's just some mythic that like Keranos is going to be a problem at some point,
right?
If it isn't already. But especially cards that are 4-ups like Cavern of Souls. So it's good that Unclaimed Territory is at least available, particularly for more casual fans, because they at least have a budget replacement, and certainly has taken its place in Constructed as well.
I appreciate that it's uncommon. I appreciate it. They could have made it rare if they wanted to. They didn't. That's awesome. Thanks.
And it fits the flavor of the set. Like, it makes sense in the story of, like, we're in this adventure world. We're Indiana Jones and all over the place. We got pirates and dinosaurs. Unclaimed Territory makes sense.
So, Aaron, what is your number 8?
My number 8 is the first of 2 hires that are on my list.
Well, poop.
I know, right?
It took us a while. I'm proud of us.
It got to number 8 before there was any hires.
Not too much of a hive brain.
That's fine. It's all good. Well, that said, Aaron, what's your number 7? Let's give you the number 7 then.
My number 7 is a card that I got to experience at my local EDH pod. My friend Christina was playing Mono Black Sidisi. And she began just tutoring for things like you're wont to do when you're playing Sidisi. And she had joked that her deck had half a win condition, which is typical for Christina. And we were really anxious to see, because the game was going on for a really long time, and we were kind of wondering, all right, girl, let's get to the point here. And so she goes tutoring, and she slams down the number 7, follows by Mutilates, and then we have like a turn to deal with it, and then nobody can deal with it, and so she wins the game. My number 7's Revel in Riches.
Yeah.
So I love cards that let you win the game in very unusual ways. You have things like I think it's near-death experience, where like if you win the game, like you're at 1, you win the game. And we have Biovisionary and things like that. And so Revel in Riches is 4 and a black. It's an enchantment. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, create a colorless treasure artifact token with tap, sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 10 or more treasures, you win the game. So Christina drew the game out, and then eventually got to a point where she slams Revel in Riches, and we're like, oh, that's cute. And then she goes, Mutilate. And she kills everything, gets 13 treasure tokens, and just because of the particular commanders and the style of decks that we had, she's like, all right, you guys got one turn, go. And so then it goes to me, and I'm running, like, again, mono blue something, so I have no way to deal with an enchantment, and I'm like, pass. And then the other guy's running something, he's got nothing, and then it comes down to Chris, who's on, like, red-black vampires, and we all just could do nothing about either the treasure tokens or the Revel in Riches. And so when Christina's upkeep comes, she goes, well, this was fun. And so I gained a new appreciation for this card, and if you can ever live the dream and win this way, it really does feel like the art of just...
Yeah. I love the art. The art of the sort of the expression of throwing the gold coins is just terrific.
Yeah, if you can make it hail with gold coins, you deserve to win the game. There's just no other way about it.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So
there aren't that many cards that just say you win the game on them, and so whenever you're able to win the game in a way that isn't dealing your opponent damage or poison counters or your opponent's library being empty, it's pretty special. So
because you're already doing, like, black should, if you're playing black, you should already be killing things. So you're already doing, you're gaining treasure just by doing what you're naturally. We talked about that with landfall. You know, one of the reasons landfall is so popular is because you got to play lands, and so if you can get any sort of benefit out of doing things you're already doing, that's gravy. And so if you're already killing things, you're just kind of absent-mindedly acquiring these treasures, and after a while you're like, I've killed enough things. I just win. Like, you don't have to go too far out of your way to do it.
I did look it up. We have exactly 23 cards in the game of Magic as of this recording that say you win the game on them.
Oh. All
right.
Yeah, there's Test of Endurance, and I mean, even we're going silver border with the cheese stands alone, and Azor's Elocutors, if you remember that card. Elocutors?
Doesn't that one give you that one gives you filibuster counters or something ridiculous, right? Yeah, that's a good one. Yes. I remember the card that I've killed the most people with you win the game is Helix Pinnacle. I used to have a deck that just put a bunch of counters on Helix Pinnacle, and I used to keep track of them on my Helix Pinnacle with a Sharpie, and I filled up the text box with tick marks. On my Helix
I've had a lot of people. I have an Omnath Locus of Mana EDH deck, and anytime I tell people that, the first thing they ask is, are you running Helix Pinnacle? And I've heard it enough to where I need you to just put it in there, I think, because you're capable of making absurd amounts of mana, and sometimes that plan doesn't always work.
Oh, man. I think my favorite of the You Win the Games is Hedron Alignment, which is from Oath of the
Have you ever made it work?
I've never made it work, but it's so cool.
It is delightful. Yeah. I've heard of people trying to make it work.
But
unfortunately, I don't think it ever actually
I've never seen the Hedrons aligned.
Fair enough. All right, so let's move on here to number 7 for you, Ruben. What you got?
My number 7, again, I like cards that just know what they want to do. I like cards that have a pro pedigree and that can win the game, and boy, do I like red cards. So my next entry is going to be Rampaging Ferocidon.
Ooh.
Which is 2 colorless and a red, 3/3 dinosaur, rare, with menace and players can't gain life.
Yeah.
I'm already sold. You don't need stop digging, you've struck oil. But there's more. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, Rampaging Ferocidon deals 1 damage to that creature's controller. I mean, how much can a red mage ask for? We got a 3/3 with evasion that my opponents can't gain. You know, who wants to gain life, first of all? But they always gain incidental life off of their, their stupid garbage removal spells or whatever.
Right.
And this thing hits hard. It hits fast because it has evasion. It comes in multiples. It's really good in multiples because it doesn't even let your opponent block efficiently because they can't play more chump blockers or creatures to trade because it'll still deal them damage. It made 2 appearances in the top 8 of Pro Tour Ixalan in the hands of John Rolfe and Eyenfeld.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's how Samuel Eyenfeld's sideboard had a 2 or 3 copies. And it's just a great card. It's one of the very few cards that actually makes me wish I was playing more standard. Just because I love this card so much.
It's one of those cards that I feel is like really obviously pushed for constructed. They kept putting things on. Like, it doesn't need menace, but they put menace on it. Like, probably gain life. Okay, sure. A 3/3 for 3 can't gain life. Even a 3/3 for 3 can't gain life, and menace is still fine. And it still deals some damage whenever somebody plays a thing. Including yourself, which sometimes matters, most times doesn't.
Yeah, you can lock yourself underneath an Eidolon of the Great Revel. I don't see why you can't lock yourself underneath a Rampaging Ferocidon also. But them's the breaks when you play mountains in your deck, bruh. So
Hey, bruh.
you take the good, you take the bad, and then you get the rampaging Ferocidons. So I think you're right. I think it was definitely, there were some things happening in development where people were like, this isn't quite, we need to add more and more and more. And then still only 2 decks ran it that made it to the top 8 of the tournament, and only one of them had it in the main deck.
Well,
so,
wait for another year,
I'll
and
wait.
then dinosaurs are going to be unbelievable,
Look,
like Energy is right now.
I have had my fill of red decks winning the Pro Tour. I am satiated. All right, friends, because all those Scandinavians won Pro Tours with Foundry Street Denizen over the last 4 or 5 years, and I'm super happy about it. I don't need another meal. But if you wanted to give me one, if you wanted to feed the baby birds, I wouldn't object to rampaging Ferocidon getting a little spot at the big kids table when it comes to Pro Tour winning decks. That's all I'm saying. So anyway, rampaging Ferocidon.
More Thanksgiving metaphors into that.
I could have tried. To be fair, all the dinosaurs in the set look a little bit like turkeys. And turkeys are gosh darn terrifying. They're like actual dinosaurs.
They're coming to get you.
They are, and they have menace. They are quite menacing, and they are terrifying. I wouldn't particularly think that a rampaging Ferocidon would be as delicious as a turkey, but I'll give it a shot.
Take a little dinosaur jerky. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, we could take the spell Roast and target a rampaging Ferocidon and see if Roast Ferocidon.
Gosh.
You know what? We're going too far with this metaphor.
If we just had a stuffing spell, it would be amazing. Right. So, well, I will tell you, if they're going to be ferocious and they're going to be rampaging, well, let me tell you, there is a spell that I'm fairly convinced. I don't know if this is true. Who has any idea? But I just have a feeling this was supposed to be rare, and they screwed it up, and they're like, oh, God, did we put Charging Monstrosaur at uncommon? This is the clearest uncommon should be rare since Cloud Goat Ranger, in my opinion. This is just, it should be rare. This card is insane in limited because you can actually get multiples of it from time to time. Charging Monstrosaur is a red and 4 generic mana for a 5/5 trample haste. Period. The end. Coming to get you. Crazy efficient. Uncommon. Should not have been uncommon. This is a rare-worthy creature. This is...
Agreed.
These aren't uncommon stats. These are rare, reality smasher stats. And yet, here you go. Just go ahead and win your games limited. It's cool. Who cares? Whatever.
Right. When the list that you're on of creatures with trample and haste that are 5/5s extends to only rares, it is only Reality Smasher and only Horde of Notions and Charging Monstrosaur, and that is the extent to which you have 5/5 trample haste creatures.
Wow.
You're absolutely right. I mean, it's it's better than 90% of the rares in the set. It's absurd. I would be shocked if it doesn't start seeing constructed play at some point, just because the stats are so overwhelming, punch you in the face. It's just a land dragon. It just is a land dragon.
Yeah.
And you don't really need flying that bad when you got trample, and you certainly don't need it when you got trample and haste. So this is a pretty ridiculous card.
Pretty scary dude. So let's move on here to number 6. Aaron, what's your number 6?
My number 6 is a card that people have been tagging me in ever since it was previewed. And not for the reasons you might think. There's no dead things. It's not black. There's no reanimating happening. There's nothing broken happening. It's a pretty fair card when you come right down to it. But it's the art that I guess reminds people of me. My number 6 is Deadeye Quartermaster.
Yeah.
So when this card came out, I was getting tagged because people thought I was the model for it. Because if you look at the art, there's this very badass, proud-looking redhead with her hair flowing in the wind, standing on a ship with a big hook for a hand. Her hand and her forearm appear to be this monstrous hook. And I guess we resemble each other. I personally don't necessarily see it, but I've been tagged dozens of times. I've signed a couple of these since I've gone to events since it came out. The artist came forward and said it's actually his wife. So I guess I look like his wife, I guess. And so it's a 3 and a blue. It's a human pirate, 2/2. you. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an equipment or vehicle card, reveal it, put it in your hand, and shuffle your library. So on the surface, you wouldn't think me, but it looks a lot like me, and so I have a great appreciation for it. People have been sending me their foreign copies and their foreign foil copies, and I'm happy. This could easily be the Aaron Campbell Invitational card, and I will be that.
See, they've been doing the same thing with Charging Monster Store. They're like, look, they put you on a card. But you're scared, like, the teeth. Right. You know, sometimes you get a little ranty, and it's like, I ain't gonna get it.
Look, some people think that all redheaded women with giant hooks for hands look exactly alike.
We do. We're not the same. We're all different. But MJ Scott is organizing another one of her Planeswalker get-togethers, like she did a couple years ago. I think she even did it last year at GP Vegas. Yeah. So she's known for sort of
Planeswalker Summit.
Yeah, so she's trying to organize another one for GP Seattle next year, and I told her if I can get that hook, I will be there, and I will. I
gotta get my Blind Seer cosplay together finally. I've been thinking about putting a Blind Seer cosplay together to be old school Urza, not new school. Go to askurza.com Urza. I'm talking like Blind Seer Mercadian masks with the Ronin Gasa hat.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it's from Invasion, but whatever.
To put that together. You know what I'm saying.
I know exactly what you were saying. You needed that cool hat. It's all about the hat.
I need the hat. It's all about the hat.
You know, the hook is one thing. Getting that sick coat, though. That coat.
It's actually not too hard to find. So MJ told me to look for either George Washington coat or Beauty and the Beast coat. Sure. And I found several that look very, very similar. The only difference is a lot of them don't have the flaps. A lot of the ones I found are just open. And it seems like a pretty minor... Right, it seems like a pretty minor detail, though, where if I couldn't find a coat with the flaps, I'm pretty sure I could still make it work. Most of the coats still had, like, the lace right here. I could easily get the pants on the boots, and I
say, you probably have these knee-high red leather boots just in your closet already.
Just hanging out.
Yeah.
As you do.
I mean, I don't know you.
With the mountain.
But I kind of know you.
Next to the mountain are the boots.
I have the hook in my closet. I don't have the boots.
Oh, okay. Well, that's your life, I guess.
She also has the rope. We ain't talking about it. It's not a big deal. Okay, let's keep moving. Ruben, what is your number 6?
My number 6, so earlier we were talking about merfolk, and don't worry, folks, the rise of merfolk is coming. The rising tide of merfolk is coming. See, I don't even do it on purpose.
Yeah,
I apologize.
Sure.
At this point, I can only apologize. But I will say that some risen merfolk have already come in Modern. And if you're looking for the card from Ixalan that is the most expensive card that has come from Ixalan added to the Merfolk deck, it is not Kapala, Warden of Waves. So Merfolk Branch Walker is a colorless and a green Merfolk Scout, uncommon. It's a 2/1, and when it enters the battlefield, it explores. Now, a lot of the cards with Explore haven't really seen their day in the sun either. It's such a weird value ability that is tough to take advantage of in Limited because it's spread across all the colors, and Ixalan is really a tribal railroaded kind of set, so it's tough to put things like cards with Explorer into your deck at the cost of synergies. But when you have the synergies in addition to the overall power, you basically have a split card in Merfolk Branchwalker. You either have a 2/1 that draws you a card, which is Silvergill Adept, or you have a 3/2, which, while probably not as good as Silvergill Adept, is still okay and allows you to put extra garbage like, Aether Vial, or, a Spreading Seas that you don't need, or another creature that's just not going to help you win the game into your graveyard. So in Modern and in Legacy, Merfolk Branchwalker is already seeing play, and once we get more Merfolk and are able to support it with even more Merfolk once the next set comes out, I think that Branchwalker is going to be a big player.
Wow, I had no idea this was actually seeing any play.
Yeah, it's mostly a Modern thing right now. People are not really branching out into the green in Legacy.
They're not really
branching out into the green and Legacy. But yeah, I've certainly seen a lot of people are playing Kumena's Speaker and Merfolk Branchwalker and Kapala in blue-green Merfolk in Modern. So I'm excited to see if it can transition once we get the critical mass of Merfolk, if we can get it into Standard.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're going to try. It's just really interesting that it's also sort of on that right part of the curve. A lot of the explore creatures feel like they're kind of behind it. So if they get the +1 counter, they're above it. But if they don't, they're kind of behind it. Even if they drew you a card, they don't really draw. They drew you a land more than likely, or they drew you a land, of course. But then they kind of get the scry ability. It's fine. But like this one just seems to be the right stats, sort of coming and going, if you will.
Right. Like the extra card, like having a colorless and a green 2/1 that says draw a card that's always a land. Like I would just play that card all the time.
Yeah.
The fact that it's a 3/2 a good percentage of the time, like in limited, I'd rather just draw the card, but in constructed, sometimes I'd rather have the extra power.
Right.
So I think that this card is just poised for a takeoff and is already seeing some play.
So my number 6 is a card that is essentially it's sort of a redo. Wizards kind of likes to do this thing. There's only so many things you can do in the world. There's only so many effects you can have in Magic. There are only so many spells that harken back to sort of a classic era, and you can't make them as cheap as they used to be. So you generally make them like 5 mana. Like Time Reversal, for example. That was a card that happened.
Right.
I cast that the other day in my Locust God deck. That felt great.
See, and I really got excited about that at once upon a time. And that's okay, because what Wizards kind of does, they're like, all right, what? Let's give this crazy effect. We'll make it 5 mana. It's fine, whatever. Spell Swindle is essentially mana drain at 5 mana, which is kind of insane. It's a 2 blue, 3 generic mana for a rare instant. Counter target spell. Create X colorless treasure artifact tokens. I'll get it out. Where X is that spell's converted mana cost, they have tap, sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So when I first read this, I read it wrong, which happens so often. It's really weird. Can play this game for just an unbelievable amount of my life, and yet you still read things wrong.
Yeah.
I thought this gave you 5 no matter what you were countering, and I was just like, what? And then like the brain popped out, and a little pea came out. It was just the basement was flooded. It was crazy.
Yep.
But when you kind of come back to Earth, you're like, okay, it's basically the fair mana drain. But they stick around. You don't even have to spend that mana the following turn. So it's really an upgrade therein. I think the artwork is beautiful. And I just love how you can harken back to an old spell that's stupidly overpowered to one that isn't, but is in some ways better, more interesting, and still powerful.
Yeah. This version is certainly better than their previous attempt to harken back to Mana Drain, which was Plasm Capture, which certainly was not particularly popular, partially because it cost blue, green, but also because you had to use the mana immediately. This one you get to put the mana on layaway, or use the artifact for whatever other reasons, improvise, or Marionette Master or something along those lines. So Spell Swindle going along with your Revelin Riches, by the way, that's the combo right there, if you can ever get it actually done.
The Mondoist of comboist.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually have not yet seen a Spell Swindle cast, even in limited, so I'm excited for that day. I don't think that the metagame in Standard will ever get to a point where a 5 mana counter spell is going to be where we're at. I mean, we just have too many mid-range decks. It's Siege Rhinos all the way down for the rest of time, folks. It's just going to be all of the walking ballistas forever and bristling hydras. Like, that's just where we're at. So it's too bad, but I still love Spell Swindle.
Speaking of mana drain, there's literally one in front of me. My boyfriend plays Vintage.
Wow. I'll just drop that. Ooh.
That is.
Look, I have a Beta Black Lotus just happened to be hanging out. That's weird, isn't it? All right, let's keep moving.
I was just going to say that.
Oh, for God's sake.
I was going to say, I think that's the most expensive item that I have, of any of us have on our desks, and I have my computer on my desk.
I've got a time ball that looks pretty old.
Wow.
My computer was not cheap. Let's put it that way.
My computer wasn't cheap. It is now.
Yeah. Used to not be.
Well, now it's potatoes.
Now it's straight taters. That's fantastic. We're going to move on here to number 5. I don't have one because it's higher on Ruben's list, and I'm telling you, I know. It's a Ruben-esque pick.
My number 5 is also higher.
Oh, my goodness. Ruben, do you have a number 5?
I do have a number 5.
Okay. What is it, buddy?
And you guys, look, there's a theme brewing here. I like things that are good in Standard.
Weird.
Now, this was only in one Pro Tour top 8 deck, but it was in the top 8 deck of the winner of the tournament. So you know it's got to be good. The Manimal decided that 2 copies of Vraska's Contempt
Nice.
were going to be good enough to have in his main deck. 2 colorless black, instant, rare, exile target creature or planeswalker, you gain 2 life. Now, Seth's energy deck was a different, slightly different, more aggressive take on the Sultai energy theme. He had stuff like Winding Constrictor and Walking Ballista in his deck. He had Blossoming Defense to be able to protect his creatures, try to go underneath the Bristling Hydras and the Glorybringers on the other sides of the board. And he also had these Vraska's Contempts, which were sort of catch-all solutions to things like Vraska, to things like Glorybringer, to other planeswalkers like Chandra and things like the Scarab God, while also giving him that incidental life gain that I absolutely hate. And it's just a perfect mesh of things that you want to have in a card. It's a mono black card, which is huge for its playability and usability. It's an instant, which is obviously always going to be a help. And I think it's the first story card on our list. Is that accurate? It's the first one with that Planeswalker watermark coming up, telling us the story of Ixalan, which was sort of how Vraska, telling the story of how Vraska sort of got trapped on the plane of Ixalan. And was very contemptuous about that fact, I believe, is the story that's being told on Vraska's Contempt. In any case, it's a fabulous spell. It's a really good removal spell. If it's good enough for the Manimal, it's good enough for me. So, Vraska's Contempt.
This was on the short list because, and part of it's because it's very unique. Exiling target creature, not unique. Exiling target planeswalker, very unique. I was sort of searching around. I don't think I can actually find a card that specifically says this in that manner, and that to me is really cool because there was definitely a port, like when Lorwyn first showed up, and even some of the subsequent sets, and they started making more planeswalkers. It was like, okay, when are we going to get our destroy target planeswalker? When are we going to blank target planeswalker or target planeswalker gains whatever or whatever it happens to be? Like really reference them, and at this point, you don't even really blink an eye at this. You're like, oh, it gets rid of a planeswalker. That's cool. Now, Oblivion Ring and things had existed, which is fine, but to specifically say that planeswalker needs to go away, I think that's awesome. And I don't know exactly what part of the story she's choking the ghost dude, but I want to go read it now.
Yeah, right.
Because maybe that's why she's stuck there, because some weird dude tricked her. I don't know.
I think it has something to do with the binding. I thought she just showed up and just got stuck there.
No, Bolus actually sent her. So
okay.
if I understand the storyline correctly, Bolus had recruited her to find either a compass or to find the fabled city, and he told her that if she did, he would essentially give her reign of the Golgari. Like he would let her lead the guild essentially because she hadn't been happy with the direction the guild was going in, and so he offered her power. And she took it, and then prior to sending her, he put in the knowledge of how to sail or how to, do that into her head. And so, no, she's basically on a mission for Bolus.
Oh, yeah. He was like, here's much like, Kung Fu in the Matrix. He's like, here's how to be a pirate.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's right.
Right.
I forgot about
and
so it's more the Angrath storyline, which I'm sure we'll get more of in the next expansion. Angrath was the one who was just on vacation. Like he was a planeswalker and would bring things back for his kids. I don't know if you read this paragraph long story, but Angrath from Angrath's Marauders is a planeswalker who just has a spark and is just some dude and would go to different planes and then on vacation and then bring back stuff for his daughters, and then one weekend just never came back because he was stuck on Ixalan. And I was like, that's my nightmare. You figured out my nightmare. Congratulations, Wizards of the Coast. My nightmare is that in its entirety.
And apparently she's choking some dude that she turned to stone. So go Medusa references.
Yeah, when you're a Medusa captain of a pirate ship, that you'll do that.
You do what you want. All right, so let's
I think she even went so far as to make the guy she turned to stone. I think she went so far as to make his head on the front of her ship.
That's awesome.
Or his body was the front of the ship. Something about that. I know the front of her ship is as a result of what she did. Yeah.
Like a former rival as a hood ornament now? That's great.
Yeah.
That's a boss move.
Well, we're moving here to number 4, and my number 4 is I think the first flip card that we actually have on the list. I have a feeling it might have been Aaron's that was higher up on someone else's, but and this one was one that looked sort of constructed worthy, but turned out to be a casual, like, all-star, like, super-duper star. Growing Rights of Itlamok was sort of the first of, let's take these classic, amazing lands, and they're still doing it with Rivals, as we've seen. Take these classic, awesome lands that are on the restricted list. We can't print them anymore. They were stupid busted anyway. We'd never reprint them in that fashion. But let's sort of give you a thing to do, which also reminds me of like how much Ixalan really feels like Zendikar, the way they should have done it. Like, this should have been Battle for Zendikar, essentially, is, you know, really cool things happen in Adventure World, but whatever. Growing Rights of Itlamok is a green and 2 generic mana for a rare legendary enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you may look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom in any order. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 4 or more creatures, you transform it into Itlamok, Cradle of the Sun. A legendary land that you tap for a green mana, or you tap to add green to your mana pool for each creature you control, also known as Gaia's Cradle. So it has the Cradle reference, which is very clever, as they should. This is one of the things they did a great job there. You should be referencing very subtly what you're sort of sending up, and it's just a monster sort of card for the casual crowd because it doesn't see a lot of play anywhere else. But you know, it's kind of like a $6 rare because everyone who plays EDH loves this thing to death.
Well, it's also a neat way to, you know, like we mentioned earlier in the show, you know, we realize that we're never going to get certain toys again. You know, you're never going to get Tolarian Academy. You are never going to get another Bazaar. You're never going to get Lotus Veil. But to get these sort of like, you know, fixed versions feels really cool, you know, and we'll take them. And so I think that's sort of, I think it taps into the nostalgia folks. But at the same time, for the people who weren't there, it's still a pretty powerful card. And so, yeah, I think it hits all the right notes.
Yeah, you still get the feeling of adding 1 billion mana to your mana pool in the casual formats for the people who care about having that, you know, gut feeling. This one, I agree. I thought that this one might have a shot at constructed, particularly in something like Elves, but Lead the Stampede just puts 1 billion cards in your hand, and this one only puts 1 in your hand, in spite of the fact that it turns into a Gaia's Cradle. So the barrier for entry is too darn high. But yeah, this card's just great. I love it. All of these flip lands are just a stroke of genius, and I can't agree more.
That's fantastic. So, number 4, Aaron, what you got?
My number 4 was the most expensive pre-order going into the release of Ixalan. It was the most expensive card you could get. Topped out at like $30, I think. It wasn't a Planeswalker. It wasn't a land. It was a creature. And there was a lot of hype around this card, specifically in Standard. It was supposed to be like the foil for control decks. And if you visit MTG Goldfish right now, you will see that the only decks that are running it are in Vintage. Standard's not touching it. Modern's not touching it. Legacy sure ain't touching it. But Oath of Druids decks love this card.
Wow.
My number 4 is Carnage Tyrant. Who knew? Who knew that
fantastic.
Vintage would want this card? So it's 4 and 2 green. It's a 7/6 dinosaur. Carnage Tyrant can't be countered. Why?
Yes, yes.
And it also has trample and hexproof. So this is a nightmare for control decks. And so there was a lot of hype about this card. There were a lot of theories as to what this card would be good against. And it kind of fizzled, at least in Standard. No one's really running it, or if they're running it, they're certainly not doing well with it. But Vintage loves it. The Oath decks can hard cast it if things don't go well. And Lord knows Blue is popular in Vintage. You know, counter spells are everywhere. Ha ha ha. There aren't many ways to deal with this in Vintage. No one's really running board wipes. And so, yeah, this card is fantastic, and I'm as surprised as anybody. And it's fallen down to like a $15 card, so much more reasonable. But going in Ixalan, this was the most expensive card to pre-order.
I mean, when it first showed up, like this thing went on for pre-order for like $5. Like it was like, it's a dork, it's a dinosaur, whatever. And then it was like, wait a minute, this card is kind of insane in that it has all these high numbers that look really scary, and it's going to come and get you. If there's a dinosaur deck, this is absolutely the top end, yada, 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 so on and so forth. And it just kind of went, it just kind of crapped the bed, if you will. I don't know if it totally crapped the bed, but it doesn't roar like you expect it to.
Yeah.
We were expecting
this
big
is
roars.
You know, we talked about Simic Sky Swallower a little bit last week. This is the Simic Sky Swallower,
sort of a modern age.
Next level of it. Yeah. This is a very Brian Kelly kind of target for an Oath deck, I think. I think that this makes a lot of sense for Oath. Honestly, it's 3 hits because it's 7 power.
Right.
It can't be countered, and you can hardcast stuff all the gosh darn time when you got Lotuses in your deck. Can't be targeted by their stupid Jace. Can't be nobody blocks in Vintage. What are we in combat? What is this, limited? Get out of here. And obviously nobody plays any Wraths. So yeah, this is a spectacular choice for Vintage. I love it.
Nice Swords to Plowshares you got there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's adorable. Take 7.
Yeah. Take a billion. I hope you have multiples. That's
awesome. So Cards are definitely on my short list of just big dumb Timmy awesomeness.
Yep.
I love it. I'm glad it's on somebody's list. Ruben, what is your number 4?
My number 4 is the centerpiece, really, the purpose of a deck that very nearly made the top 8 of Pro Tour Ixalan, and I wish it had, because it was really, to me, the most creative, interesting thing that anyone did with Ixalan at the Pro Tour. It's the closest thing we're going to get to Goblin Rabblemaster in the next 5 years, everybody. I hate to break it to you, but Mavrin Fane, Dusk Apostle, is my next installment on my top 10. Mavrin Fane is a 2-colorless and a white 2/2 vampire cleric legend. Whenever one or more non-token vampires you control attack, create a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink. It's slightly worse than Brimaz, obviously. It's slightly worse than Goblin Rabblemaster, but you know what? Cards like that don't come around every dynasty. So we're gonna have to settle for Mavrin Fanes every once in a while. And the mono white vampires deck that, for example, Wilson Hunter made top 25 at Pro Tour Ixalan with, this certainly caught a lot of people by surprise. You're able to get under a lot of people's initial defenses with stuff like Duskborn Skymarcher and Adanto Vanguard. Then on turn 3, when you drop the big legendary creature, you're able to start making an army. You're able to start grinding out card advantage with Aviary Mechanic and a Ketra's Monument combo. Top it off with our preview card, Angel of Invention, and be able to go super long game with stuff like Legion's Landing. So this mono white vampires deck was the most exciting thing that came out of the Pro Tour for me. Unfortunately, none of the copies made top 8. I would have really liked to have seen one of these make the Sunday stage so that it got a lot more hype, because I still feel like this deck is really under the radar.
I do too.
Even though it put up a very impressive series of results at the Pro Tour. I feel like this deck was the most impressive deck at the Pro Tour to me, and just no one plays it still. This would, like, if I were to play in a standard tournament, this is probably the deck I would take. And Mavrin Fane is a big reason why.
Now, this is sort of one of I also think that's one of those decks that probably just needs like one more thing from Rivals.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Just one more good 1-drop or more
Absolutely.
good 4-drop or something that just kind of pushes it over the top, and very well may get there.
If it's already this good, certainly all it needs is one more. Like, we're talking about how maybe Merfolk gets there if they get 5 or 6 more pieces. Mono White Vampires needs, like, another piece, maybe.
This gives me a reason to root for Craig Wesco. Like, I like Craig Wesco as a person, but, like, normally I'm not White Wheaton.
Here we go. Here we go. Company led by Mr. Cox.
Aaron.
I was going to say I'm not White Weenie Girl, but that's a lie. But,
Wow.
I'm not normally into that style of deck, but when I saw that there was a mono white vampire deck, I was all ears, and I was like, this is up my alley, this is fine, I would play this deck.
So what you're saying is when the white weenie shows up, Aaron is ready to go.
Yeah.
Got it. Understood.
That's all I heard.
Yep. That's
Moving on.
where we're at. All right, so let's move on here to number 3, where I share the same.
Oh, same.
Samey, same?
Are we on the same cycle?
That's weird. How is this not it? Ruben, are you the same?
Nope.
How,
Not the same.
How do you not have this card in your top 10 list?
Similar, not the same. My number 3 is higher, so you can just skip on past me.
Oh, we
Okay.
were planning to.
Yeah, for sure. But no, our number 3, our shared number 3 of me and Aaron, this is a very rare occurrence, and I appreciate that, is a reprint.
Yeah.
And it is a very powerful, important reprint that I am shocked is not on Ruben's list. Number 3 is Opt.
Yeah.
Opt is the reprint from Invasion. It actually adds Scry 1 instead of before. For the Invasion common, it was 1 blue for an instant that said, look at the top card of your library. You may put it on the bottom of your library and draw a card. So that was very much a spelled out Scry. And they've done this weird thing where like some old cards get Scry, but not every card gets Scry, even if it's scrying.
Right.
But Opt these days is, again, a blue for an instant, Scry 1, draw a card. Good old, it's like, it's nice, it's clean, and it's efficient, and I appreciate that. But to me, this was one of the sort of really exciting reprints. It came back to not only standard, but modern. And Wizards has been super adamant that 1 blue draw a card in some fashion is almost always too good. And it appears that Opt is actually right where they want it to be.
Yeah, this card has injected new life into modern Control decks. We've seen a resurgence in Control, whereas Control was not popular for a really, really long time. It was always on the fringe.
Mm-hmm.
You had your Sean McLarens and your, the people who really lived for it. I think we all know, like, the Jeskai guy or the Esper guy, like, Shaheen Sarani, but it was never, like, tier 1. Jeskai Harbinger had it for a minute, but, Modern was always very hostile to Control decks because you just have to be prepared for everything, and the Control decks really aren't able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But this deck has really made Jeskai Control a thing. It's made Blue-White Control a thing. The Death Shadow decks are using it. The Teamer Breach, I guess, is a thing. There's a Teamer Breach archetype on Magic Online. Storm has had a huge resurgence thanks to this card. It has been what a lot of decks were asking for, and who would have thought? Because we've had Serum Visions, we've had Sleight of Hand, we've had similar things. It's not like we've had nothing, but there's just something about this card that made it better than all the rest.
They just kind of kept taking things away, though. They kept saying, it's like, all right, there's no preordain, there's no ponder. Like, can we just get 1 blue spell that does a thing that when I want it, and Opt does it?
Well, that when you want it is the key there. They finally gave an instant speed one. You can finally hold mana open on turn 2 for both Mana Leak and your Serum Visions, which you couldn't do before. You had to either leave your mana open for Serum Visions and hope it doesn't go to waste, or for Mana Leak and hope it doesn't go to waste, or cast your Serum Visions and then get punished by their turn 2 play. This allows you to keep your mana open, keep your options open with Snapcaster Mage later in the game as well if you have a bunch of excess mana. Opt is a great reprint. I'm super glad that it's in Standard, Modern, etc.
And it's also one of those things that, it's, to me, this is very much a feather in the development, sort of team's hat, that they were able to bring this back in the right way, to hit the right formats, to do the right thing, but it didn't take over the narrative of the set. Like the problem for example, a Pernicious Deed, that they're never going to put it in Ravnica or a Ravnica set because we're just going to talk endlessly about how they're reprinting Pernicious Deed versus this other new thing. Well, this is a common and it's cool because it brings back certain things. It has a nostalgia factor, but it doesn't sort of warp things around it in a way a really big, powerful rare from back in the day would if they tried to put it in a modern set.
The trinity of reprints of Lightning Strike, Opt, and Duress in this set, I think, really showed development's prowess with how they know which cards to bring back.
Yeah.
This was definitely a sort of an artistic sort of, this is what you needed. This is what you wanted.
Nice little flourish. Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head, Evan, with the sort of subtlety there, as opposed to Theros, where it's like, here's Thoughtseize, and it's like...
What? Just whap you over the head with Mutavault.
Yeah. The precision of it was really notable.
That was fantastic. So, Ruben, what's your number 3?
My number 3 is higher on someone else's list.
Okay. So that's I still can't get over that you didn't have this on your list, Mister. I like tournament winning cards. And...
Look, I love tournament winning cards, but I have all Ixalan cards on my list. I didn't include any cards from Invasion. So that's you. That's on you. Is what that's on.
It's on us.
I'll take this and then put it on you.
Wow.
Is what that is.
Well, tell us, buddy. I can't tell you what my number 2 is because it's your number 1.
Well, I'm easy to read, so.
But what is your number 2?
Really
I'm just guessing it's yours, but go ahead.
Look, here's the deal. Earlier we were talking about Collins Mullen's ridiculous run at SCG Cincinnati, and I brought up Unclaimed Territory. I think it's only right to talk about the other card that helped dominate that format and the real the real raison d'etre for humans becoming a big thing, and one of the main ways that it's able to capitalize on taking down these spell-based decks is because it now has Kitesail Freebooter. So Kitesail Freebooter is a colorless and a black pirate human. Human being the important part randomly from Ixalan. It's an uncommon. And it's a 1/2 with flying. When it enters the battlefield, you look at target opponent's hand and choose a non-land, non-creature spell from it, and exile that card for as long as Kitesail Freebooter remains on the battlefield. So, a couple things about Kitesail Freebooter. First of all, it's a mesmeric fiend. It's able to take away, the whatever card you want to call it, the Tidehollow Sculler, that effect. Brain Maggot for those enchantment players out there, and it's able to take that effect away. Second, it's a flyer, which is hugely important in Modern because you get these ground stalls with all the Tarmogoyfs and Death Shadow shenanigans and all the minions on the ground. And third, it's 2 mana. It's very easy to get onto the battlefield, so you can Ether Violet into to play very quickly. It's easy on your mana because it's only 1 black mana source, even though you're playing all these 5-color lands in your deck. And because it has that evasion, you're able to play your things like Thalia's Lieutenants and Mayors of Averbruck to be able to pump it up. So even if your stuff on the ground can't get through, your Kitesail Freebooters are still poking away for 2, 3, maybe 4 in the air at a time. Kitesail Freebooter is a really important card and a really important piece that was missing in that deck to be able to fully take advantage. Meddling Mage does really great work against stuff like Storm and Jund if you could pinpoint the right thing to take away. But Kitesail Freebooter targets the hand, not just the archetype, which is a huge deal.
And it's just sort of good value.
Yeah.
It's one of those. It kind of reads a little strange, at least to me, because a 2 mana 1/2 flyer. We're in Stormcrow territory, but then you kind of stick the Mesmeric Fiend on it, and it's kind of absolutely amazing and sees much Modern play, which is fantastic. I wanted to
add that I think the flying is particularly relevant because the problem with the Brain Maggot type cards is that they don't have any kind of evasion and that they're also quite small. And so I was somebody who played a lot of Black-Green Constellation and Theros, and so Brain Maggot would do what you wanted it to do, but then you've got this 1/1 that can't reasonably attack into anything because it'll get killed, and then they'll get the card back. And so unless you have a way to make it bigger or make it get around something, it's just going to sit there. And I guess that's fine if that's all you want to do. But, the fact that flying is very relevant, you still get that effect and it can reasonably get in there, unless they're running something like Lingering Souls or unless they're running whatever. And so I think the flying is very important as somebody who's used those cards before.
Absolutely. And even against something like Lingering Souls, it's a 1/2, so it can hold off those idiots on the defense.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was definitely a problem of, wow, this creature's cool, but I can never attack or block with it ever again now. It might as well be sort of a cheaper Oblivion Ring-esque / effect or whatever.
And that was always the problem with Brain Maggot and Mesmeric Fiend, is that it couldn't tangle.
Yeah, exactly. So, Aaron, what's your number 2?
My number 2 has been described as broken and busted, and people have asked questions of what were they thinking? My number 2 is Search for Escanta.
Nice.
So it's 1 in a blue. It's a legendary enchantment, one of the flip lands, as we've discussed. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You can put it in your graveyard. Then if you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you can transform Search for Escanta, in which it becomes Escanta the Sunken Ruin, which you can tap for a blue. And then you can pay 2 in a blue and tap it to look at the top 4 cards of your library. You can reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest in the bottom in your library in any order. This is a control deck's dream. This is even seeing play in Topless Miracles in Legacy.
Wow.
This is seeing Legacy play. This is seeing Modern play. This is certainly seeing play in Standard. This card is amazing. I, as somebody who loves their graveyard, also enjoys this deck. It's a little expensive for my taste. I prefer 1 mana or free. But this card is great, and I certainly see what all the fuss is about. And I have watched, as part of my job, I've certainly been over Shaheen Surani's shoulder when he's used this card, and it's just everything you want to be doing. It's just fantastic.
It's pretty devastating. This was my number 5.
This was my number 3.
Awesome. And so, yeah, we were very close, as it were. But Search for Ascanta, definitely, yeah, I think we all sort of basically said, yeah, this is number one. This is number one with a bullet, best flip land.
Yep.
Arguments for the rest of them, there was no argument, in my opinion, as to which was the best. This is the best.
Yeah.
Pros latched onto it immediately. Everybody was excited. This card, I think, has lived up to all of the hype, which is great.
Yeah.
Like you wanted it to be great early and great late, and by God, it's great early and it's great late, and
Absolutely.
that is as good as it gets sometimes. And even drawing multiples, like if you've already flipped it into the Sunken Ruin, it's okay to do it again. Like, okay, I'll tap this one for mana, and then I'll flip this one and use the rest of it to do it again. Right. So there's ways you can take advantage of it. You know, whether you have multiples, whether you don't, it's amazing on turn 2. It really showed sort of Thassa was sort of, I think, the first real, scry on your upkeep. That get a scry every turn. That's a very important thing. Well, this one is not only sort of scry-ish, it lets you fill your graveyard, which is a huge resource, as Aaron well knows. Yeah. As it turns out. And yeah, so this to me is a sort of, it's awesome when you see something and you're like super excited and it lives up to all those expectations.
Perfectly said.
Awesome. So let's move on here to our number one, our numeros unos. And I can tell you that, through the magic of deduction, Aaron's number 8 is my number 1. Because if you're going to go, I like going all the way. I like the fact that if you look back at Ixalan and you look back at certain things and certain cards, some cards have such amazing stories that it doesn't really matter if they're great cards. They're great stories. They make important points. And Admiral Beckett Brass is amazing. Has an incredible story behind it, because not only is there like 4 women kicking all pirate booty up in here, pirate booty, saw what I did there, which is great. And not only that, like they're like, they're not necessarily young women either. These are like some seasoned ass kicking grandmas coming to get you, swinging on the ropes. That's fantastic. I love that. And then you have the Admiral herself. First of all, again, herself, which is great. Love seeing that. Who's just this sort of epic, amazing stance, just incredible thing. Let's get to the card first, before I tell you the sort of the sort of what really ties this all together. A red, black, and a blue, and a generic mana. So our 4-mana, 3/3 mythic legendary human pirate. Other pirates you control get +1/+1. At the beginning of your end step, gain control of target non-land permanent controlled by a player who was dealt combat damage by 3 or more pirates this turn. Okay. That's cool. I really don't really care that much about the text, to be honest with you. Doesn't make a difference to me. But when you have the story of Jason Rainville not only painted his mom as the Admiral herself, but she is a breast cancer survivor, which just makes it all the more cool and sort of sentimental, and just ties all of this together in a way that I love it. I love everything about this card. And when I think of Ixalan and I go, what's so great about Ixalan? I'm like, look at this. Look at how awesome this card is. Look at the story behind this card. Look what's going on in this card. You ever seen grandmas kicking ass? It's time. Here we go. Let's do this. And I love that.
Yeah.
I love it.
Sassy grandmas is definitely my new aesthetic. I'm a big fan of. I mean, my mom's mom is like, really reminded me of my grandma Barbie, who was like, when I was like 6, would hit me with the yardstick in case if I was doing something wrong, but was also just the most loving and compassionate, but would also kick your ass if you ever, what I'm talking about, like real like salt of the earth grandma kind of deal. And that's how I feel about Admiral Beckett Brass, is that I just love everything about her. She's the leader of an entire coalition. She's not just a captain, which she is a captain, but she's also a leader of an entire coalition of ships.
Yeah.
The Brazen Coalition. The Brazen Coalition of Admiral Beckett Brass.
Beckett
which
Brass.
I find absolutely delightful. She is the leader of the Fathom Fleet, as opposed to anything that starts with the letter B.
Well, she's an admiral, in fact. Not even
she's an admiral. Captain. That's true. She's the lead. Well, she's in charge. She's numero uno. She's the big kahuna of the Fathom Fleet.
Beckett Brass.
She's got a long CV, is what I'm trying to say. I just like everything about Beckett, and I think she's great.
Yeah, this was my number 8. I was really excited about this card. You guys said it perfectly. I love that she takes up so much of the frame. I like that she's just a big, badass older lady. I believe Lannery Storm, Captain Lannery Storm, I believe, is part of her group, I believe. And so, when I think of this organization, I want her and Carrie Zev and DePaula to get together and just have all the adventures. Like, I'm completely here for that storyline. And so, yeah, I think especially as somebody who's been playing EDH a lot more lately, I would 100% build a pirate EDH deck. It just looks like so much fun. And again, this is something that's similar to Gishoth. You know, they really said to people, you know, Gishoth was the one where it's like, if you're here for dinosaurs, we got you. And, you know, this was the one where it's like, you here for pirates? You're going to love this. And it's just a home run.
And it takes advantage so much of the treasure tokens. You know, it's like, yeah, this is probably really difficult to cast. If only we gave the pirates a perfect way to get her into play.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, who cares?
And it also matches up perfectly with how the pirates of Ixalan behave. It's all manner of discarded races of various types. They're all goblins and orcs and sirens and humans, and all these unwanted, discarded, misfit toys are welcome within the pirate conclave. You know, if you got arms and legs and can wield a sword, we can use you. And it's exactly that way. And I think that the flavor of that meshes well with the being able to cast all of the different kinds of pieces to be able to support Admiral Bucket Brass on her high seas adventures.
I like that she also sort of embodies the tempo style, where it's like she is a lord, but she's not necessarily a lord. You know, so like you have the merfolk, which are more evasion, you know, sort of going through water. You have the zombies that are really just trying to be big and possibly have menace and survive. You know, and I like that her sort of the literal pirating ability of, you know, if you hit with so many pirates, you just start to take things. And I love the way that each of these lords just sort of has their own flavor, that tribal flavor to them. I think it's really great.
Awesome. So Ruben, what is my number 2 and your number 1?
Well, if you're paying attention at home, there's a big gaping hole in the resume of Ixalan that we haven't touched on yet, and we're about to. And that hole is about to be exiled from the game, and then I'm going to recast it on my side of the board.
My number 5.
Your number 5. Evan's
Nice.
number 2, and my number 1
That's right.
is Hostage Taker. So, Hostage Taker began life, if we had done this show right at the beginning, all of our this would have been, by the way, in all of our lists at the very beginning, because Hostage Taker was a misprint. If y'all remember, Hostage Taker doesn't read what it says it does. It accidentally got printed with, at the beginning, your end step style wording. So what happened is on the card, it says that you can exile any creature, including itself.
Yeah.
Which means that if you play it on an empty board, you have drawn the game.
Yeah.
That is what happens. It exiles itself and brings it back into... Or you can go infinite with like a Soul Warden or some other garbage like that. But since then, Hostage Taker has turned out to be the life of the party in Standard, being, you know, not only a showcase piece in the Pro Tour winning deck, being a big reason why God Pharaoh Gifts decks are all the rage these days. It's just absolute value. It's maybe the most busted sealed card I've ever seen in my entire life. I'm not sure anyone has ever beaten a Hostage Taker in Limited ever.
It is insane.
It is pretty bananas for just kind of a faceless butcher. Like, it's kind of a little impressive when you just look at its statistics, because it's a 2/3 for 4 mana, 2 colorless blue-red or blue-black. But it's really taken on a life of its own, and it's spectacularly powerful, really good. Another badass female pirate leading some of the fleet along the shores of Azcanta, along with Admiral Beckett Brass.
So what does it do exactly?
So
for those who don't know,
I gotta look up the wording.
Oh no. Well, let me help you.
Make sure I get it right.
It's a black, blue, and 2 generic mana for a 2/3 rare human pirate. When it enters the battlefield, exile target artifact or creature until Hostage Taker leaves the battlefield. And it should be exile another target artifact or creature. You may cast that card for as long as it remains exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any type to cast that spell. So it's bananas.
Yes.
There's one thing when it's just like the Oblivion Ring type effects, Fiend Hunter-esque, take a thing and get rid of it. It's cool. Well, not only is it sort of, you know, Fiend Hunter-esque, it also exiles artifacts, which sometimes matters, such as, for example, vehicles. But the fact that you can just keep it exiled for as long as you have it, and whenever you feel like it, just play that thing for any mana. This is the card that, like, no matter where you're kind of at in sealed, you stretch to make this card hit your deck, you make it work. Like, okay, I'll make enough treasure tokens, I'll splash this thing or these lands or whatever. I got these dual lands to help. And I was looking up sort of some cards that do very similar things. If you look at Psychic Intrusion, which is a Theros card, I believe. This is it was a black, a blue, and 3 generic mana for a sorcerer.
Sure.
They reveal their hand, you choose a non-land card from it, and then you may cast it as if you had, mana of any color, blah, blah, blah. Whatever, because Hostage Taker takes something they've already spent mana for, they've already invested in, you basically trump that thing, you get rid of it, and then later you bring it to your side. That is just an incredible tempo swing no matter how you look at it.
Absolutely. It's bananas in every way, shape, or form. It's a body in and of itself, but the fact that you're able to steal something from your opponent and put it on your side of the battlefield is the real value in it. Not to mention blinking it or returning it to your hand or getting to reuse the ability in some way, like Godpharaoh's Gift, for example, or Siren's Ruse, which I said earlier on my list. Yeah, it's just a bananas card. It's so good, and I can't imagine anything taking its place away from number 1 unless something drastic happens with the release of the next set.
Aaron, how do you feel about old Hostage Taker since it was your number 5?
I personally have not ever cast one. I've certainly never been on the receiving end of one. I haven't played a lot of Standard as much as I would like to, but excuse me. You certainly can't deny that the impact the card has had on Standard. I remember watching the World Championships and just things like that, and it's just a very powerful card. And I certainly didn't expect this. Like if you would have asked me going into Ixalan, which card is going to make the biggest splash, I wouldn't have picked Hostage Taker, and here we are. And I also just love the art. The art kind of reminds me of the Foglios a little bit. With just the style of the pirate, and it's a nifty card.
I do like this sort of, I wouldn't call it cartoony, but I would just say sort of, well-defined faces. They're a little shinier than usual. Wayne Reynolds did a great job there. But so to close us out here, Aaron, what is your number 1?
So a big thing for me when I'm making these lists is impact on multiple formats, and specifically impact on older formats, because the power level on cards in those formats is so high that it takes a lot to be able to hang in Vintage and to hang in Legacy. We talked about how Carnage Tyrant kind of shot straight to Vintage, but we really haven't seen it make an impact in other formats, certainly not in Standard, Modern, or Legacy. Search for Escanta has certainly done work in Standard and Modern, and is starting to touch down in the Legacy a little bit, but hasn't really cracked Vintage. And so, but Vintage for me is sort of the pinnacle, where if you can affect multiple formats and Vintage, I think you've really done it all. And my number 1 certainly has done that. My number 1 is Sorcerer's Spyglass. I have seeded the game. When it goes Mishra's Workshop, Sorcerer's Spyglass, naming Bazaar, we're going to do. There's nothing I can do about that. And so it is 2 colorless. It's an artifact. As Sorcerer's Spyglass enters the battlefield, look at an opponent's hand, then choose any card name. Activated abilities of sources with a chosen name can't be activated unless they're mana abilities. So it's essentially a Pithing Needle. But the problem with Pithing Needle is you're basically flying blind. Right. You might be able to say like Wasteland. You might be able to say Deathrite Shaman. I do, at least. But, sometimes they don't have it. They might not have it in their hand, and then you're waiting for that card to sort of come down. Oh, no. You get to look at the hand and then find that one pesky thing in their hand and be like, yeah, that. You're not doing that. No. And that's a very powerful effect, especially if you're able to cheat this out with cards like Mishra's Workshop, with cards like Moxen. This is also seeing play in the Oath decks. The Oath decks are starting to pack this in Vintage. Lantern Control in Modern is starting to rock this deck, which needed it like a hole in the head. Eldrazi Tron in Modern has also adopted this deck. Legacy, it sees play in the Eldrazi decks. Elves! There were 4 Elves decks on Magic Online running this card. Mono Red Sneak Attack, the Mono Red Stompy decks in Legacy are running this. It's seeing play in all of the formats except Standard. Sorry, girl. But to be able to affect Modern, Legacy, and Vintage, I think that really says something. And this card is terrifying, and that's why it's my number 1.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the only reason why it's not in Standard, by the way, is because Etherworks Marvel's banned. This would see play in Standard constantly if Smuggler's Copter and Etherworks Marvel were in the format. I 100% agree. This thing has had a huge impact on the older formats. The fact that I'm not surprised at all to see it in Vintage, as Sorcerer's Spyglass is exactly the kind of pinhole kind of solution that you want like really good targeted thing that the shops decks really love. The fact that it's seeing play outside of the shops decks is even surprising to me. But then once you start moving back formats and start coming back into Legacy and Modern, that's even more surprising. The fact that it doesn't target is kind of adorable. So if your opponent has Leyline of Sanctity in play, you still get a peek, which is kind of cool.
Which is fine.
Yeah, it's a thing. Yeah. I mean, your card's not going to waste. And you can also name fetch lands with this, right?
Can't be mental misstep.
Yeah, can't be mental misstep. That's another huge deal. But I certainly love the idea of looking at like a Merfolk player's hand, expecting to name Ethervile, and then they've just got 3 Misty Rainforest in their hand, going, well, here's this card now.
Yeah.
GG.
So, yeah.
That's fantastic. Exactly. The idea it's sort of very sort of mental missteppy in that way, and that it did nothing in standard, but it's amazing in other formats because the further you go back, the dumber the activated abilities get, and this lets you not only peek but also name whatever they have if you got them, or it names your number one thing that you don't want them to draw and or play thereafter, which is terrific. It was also one of the first cards that was spoiled on the sort of the leak of the rare sheet, and it was like, whoa, Ixalan's going to be awesome. And again, this definitely feels like, they wanted, this is the part where they're like, okay, Aetherworks Marvel stops here. Like, there's a bunch of cards where, where, what was the white enchantment that gets rid of? Solemnity. Yeah, Solemnity, Sorcerer Spyglass, there were some other ones where it's just like, okay, these crazy, crazy powerful things, a Saheeli Rai combo, for example, with all that stuff would just stop. If this card were printed like a set or two behind, maybe it could have saved some bannings. I don't know, but I definitely think it would have changed a lot of things really quickly had it showed up in any set before Ixalan.
The world looks a lot different if the bannings or if this card comes out 3 or 6 months in advance, is able to live in a world with Marvel or with Saheeli Rai or with Smuggler's Copter, any of those cards. And then certainly that's just a different looking world, though. We have a Braid seeing more play probably and things like that. So, but yeah, that just speaks to the power of just this card alone, is how big a shift the whole thing would have been had Sorcerer's Spyglass seen play in Standard. Not even to mention how much of a dominant force that it certainly is, at least in Vintage right now.
That's so cool. I just think that's amazing, because I wasn't aware on that sweet Mishra's Workshop tech, and it certainly sounds like it.
Oh yeah, that sounds like not the thing that Aaron likes the most.
No.
I just love the fact that, the number one for Aaron was such a huge constructed card, and yet it's not on Ruben's list at all.
Oh. Yeah.
Neither is Opt. And
I didn't spy it. I didn't spy that one.
Wow. And that was our top 10 favorite Ixalan cards. You'll see them on the screen now for review. We want to hear from you about what card we didn't talk about, and we'll select our favorite to win a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com. So before we go, I want to thank my co-hosts. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for having me.
Going first, by the way. Thank you, Ruben.
Thank you. Bookends.
That's right. The ends of the book, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to move to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, CardHoarder.com, my co-hosts, Aaron Campbell and Ruben Bressler. Hope you guys for watching, and hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Visit our website at magicmicspodcast.com that exists thanks to our Patreon supporters. Or follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv/magicmics, on Twitter at magicmicecast, on Reddit at reddit.com/r/magicmics, and on Facebook at facebook.com/magicmics. Talk to us privately at magicmicspodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at magicmicspodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes, or join us here next week for another top 10 episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.